optimal choice here for State. Golden Heights, you probably think about the same thing, but I feel like Kasva's bans were all focused on his home map, Holy Island, Rus and HRE being banned, so State might have to go with his third, maybe fourth best civilization for this map. Not an ideal position for him to be in.
State definitely no stranger to the ways of the Abbasids, but might feel a little bit strange at times here on Holy Island. Kasva, was this what he was playing for all along? Can he turn it about? We move into the deciding game. Whoever flops here is going to be oust. They're going to have to look forward to round number 3.
Indeed, Kasva just 1 point from the first round of Golden League 2. He really needs a good run here in round 2 to have a chance at the final playoffs. Whereas for State, he had a pretty good run in the first round. He's up to 15 points. That's actually tied for the top 12 position, alongside the likes of Recon, I'm Magic, and Sword Off. So for State, if he moves on over here, that's going to be a big W, because once again, he could be on trajectory to get a decent amount of points, and he could actually be one of these sneaky under-radar candidates, possibly looking out for one of those playoff spots.
It's the Evolution Estate. Competitor and commentator in StarCraft 2, commentator in PUBG. These things took up a lot of time in 2022. I remember talking to him, saying he wasn't able to really commit the hours he intended. Sometimes, he'd turn up to play the Road to Red Bull Wall, and he maybe had enough time to play 2, possibly 3 games that week. That's insane to think about, the players he's going up against. But State, more recently, has been able to dedicate at least several hours a week, if not more. And it truly is showing in his performances here.
Yeah, so far, very heavy commitment to wood here from State. Playing with just 1 dock, though, which actually there is the second dock. Yeah, this is what I was expecting. There's a discount on the Abbasid docks, and you send all your villagers to wood. Makes me feel like he wants to go for that double docks play. Very similar to what the HRE plan to do here. They can do that off the back of that extra wood income they get from the buffed villagers.
And the cool thing is the HRE is, like, you don't sacrifice as much as you once did when you walk villagers out like this. Like, think about the opening where you had to idle a villager. At the beginning of the game, your prelate is able to buff your entire economy. But when you start with 12 villages, it's impossible for your prelate to buff all 12 villages with just 1, right? So you're not actually forfeiting efficiency in that regard, right? You're not losing out on a 1.4 villager, you're only losing on a 1 villager. It's a pretty cool little difference maker that makes this play more comfortable for the HRE.
I think the thing I like about the prelate in that scenario is that you have it saturated. In a 6 villager start, you actually aren't fully using the entire time available for the prelate, whereas with 12, it's much easier to justify this. In fact, you see, as Kasva is getting back to the lumberjacks, this prelate is going to be buffing the whole time.
Exactly, that's the point, right? You're not losing a 1.4 villager, because remember, they get the 40% gathering speed. You're just losing a normal villager. Sure, it's still idle time, but you're not losing a bigger edge than you otherwise had in the opening of the HRE. So I definitely think we're going to see a lot more HRE in this round. It just, especially for maps that have a water hybrid element to them, might even see them kind of resurge on something like Kawasan. I think that they looked pretty formidable when we last saw that map regularly and competitive. And I think the reasons why still hold true now.
I honestly think that HRE is one of the most buffed civilizations by the 12 villager start. But there's something else to talk about over here. That's the trade wing coming in here for State. I love this. This is going to be so fun to take a look at, especially because if he can get water control, that naval trade will single-handedly win the game for him.
He doesn't really need it for the naval trade. He just wants the land traders, right? But like the interesting detail is he set up his House of Wisdom closer to the neutral trade post as opposed to further. So he kind of missed out on extra value. Like, he could have just dropped that House of Wisdom on the west side and probably got, like, I want to say an extra, 8, maybe 9 gold per trader.
Good point. I guess one of the things he doesn't want to do is extend the distance traveled by the traders. Like, at this point, especially given that you're going to have a lot of naval engagement, it might actually be more beneficial for him to have slightly lower gold return per trip, but get that faster, because you need resources ASAP, especially the beginning of Feudal Age.
Well, like, you could just trade with your opponent's dock, right? Like, that's an option here. I think you get 1 trade-off that way. Now, dude, I'm standing by it, all right? I want to see someone trading with someone else's Silver Tree, but the difference here is, like, a Silver Tree can pack up. What are you going to do, delete your dock? Great, now I have a bigger naval advantage. The only downside is, like, Kasva has got access to racks, and he has started building spears. So if he scouts this early, State will have to come up with a new plan.
Yeah, I guess the concern for Kasva is that Spearman by itself won't crack it. So he's actually going for second barracks. This could be aggressive, very aggressive that is. But I don't think it's going to be for Feudal Age. It's going to be a fast castle for Kasva, I feel like. He's going to go a couple of men-at-arms, but looking at the food and gold income, I wouldn't be surprised to see him going semi-fast castle and going castle age men-at-arms here.
Okay, yeah. Then, sorry, I'm an idiot. What am I talking about? Yeah, you're right. He can do his own dock, can't he? Ignore me. It's been a long day. In fairness, though, still, come on, guys. Trade with your opponent's dock. It is the ultimate Chadley play. It flexes on them so hard, they have no choice but to type GG and leave.
Don't forget that you're getting some extra gold for a neutral trade post. So despite the longer distance for State here between the House of Wisdom, or House of Learning, actually, and his own dock, it might still be more beneficial gold-wise to trade with a neutral trade post. So far, Kasva doesn't have massive mobility to deny it with. In fact, he's even coming in from the wrong angle. He tried to attack on the left side, so he's yet to do much against those traders.
Well, if he actually gets on the left, though, like, you know, the intended play should be to go for your dock, right? Like, you can't even redirect halfway here. You have to commit. So I think it's actually better if Kasva just parks himself near the water side.
This is crazy. This is big brain. He is trading with a neutral trade post, but dropping it off at the dock. This is not something we thought about. And now...
That is... Did you say that?
No.
We're both having a long evening here.
Yeah, like, you were just so locked in on trading with the opponent's dock, and I was like, well, you could actually just trade with your own dock and just ignore the neutral trade post. But yeah, it's a long evening, and he's actually choosing the best way to utilize that trade wing.
Just call it what it is. You got sick of listening to my voice and filtered me out. It's okay, I'm used to it by now. But Camel Archer's coming out from State, the perfect answer. And this is where Kasva starts to fall behind, right? He hasn't got blacksmiths yet, he hasn't got marching drills, and now he has no way of stopping trade. I think State completely baited Kasva in with this opening, and now he's at a clear disadvantage.
Yeah, and this is the problem aggressing the Abbasids, because you will go for a men-in-arms, a unit that most civilizations struggle to deal with in Feudal Age, but Camel Archers, while they take a long time to build, they're extremely effective and very resource efficient against those men-at-arms. Now you see those men-at-arms, completely useless. Camel Archers will slowly pick them apart. And even pivoting into Horsemen or something along those lines is going to be a challenge for Kasva because, well, Camel Archers, they will just debuff them and Abbasids can then go for their own Horsemen.
It's kind of like makes you wonder, Kasva, could he have just tried to take up immediately? Was it too greedy? I mean, I look at his resources, like he's got 9 men at arms, he's got 800 food. It really is the difference, right? Obviously, you wouldn't have had troops to begin the age up, but you would have had a better way of dealing with this. You would at least had more chunky men at arms that don't just get munched down by the base damage of the camels.
I feel like opening with a couple of men at arms was fine, but seeing the Camel Archers, seeing the trade, and just having no chance to harass them immediately, I don't think he should have doubled down on Feudal Age aggression. He should have gone Castle Age and then start mixing in some Knights maybe. Even just 1 or 2 is going to make the life of those traders a nightmare. Looks like he's actually doubling down on Feudal Age though. Fully on Feudal, spent all his food. He's also focusing on water though. That's part of the reason why State is losing the Camel Archers. But this is the problem. Bagla's pushing Kasva back on the water. And Kasva also isn't looking really good on land.
Now, he can't easily defend this. He's just behind on the sprung count. He finally matches up against it, but like the archer ships can now just target the fishing boats, which means you can't easily heal in this. Look how clustered they are. It feels like Kaz is panicking because he's trying to address the trade, he's trying to address the camel archers, and now he's trying to protect his own investments on the water side. It's just too much.
And it gets worse than that because he's not going into Castle Age. Those traders already paid for the investment that State has made into them. Camel Archers will slowly take down those men-at-arms, and I feel like if you lose your fishing eco right now as Kasva, you will have no option to go up to Castle Age. I feel like his opportunity to go into Castle Age might already be gone.
Don't fixate on these traders. I think like, State is essentially using the face value of how we felt about trade for a long time to bait Kasva in. Like, that's the way this has played out. He's become so fixated on needing to shut down the trade that he's neglected every other element of the game that State is playing. And it's why State looks pretty damn dominant right now.
Yeah, it's such lovely detail. Kind of using the fact that players prioritize the water, especially because, as you said, if you look away from the water, you could lose your fleet in a moment. You look at the HRE, even if they go for a couple of men-at-arms, normally their focus is on the water and then getting to Castle Age. So, by going for trade, State kind of forced Kasva's hand, forced him to invest into a pretty heavy Feudal Age here, which is slowly getting some value for itself by destroying that market, but this comes at the expense of losing the water.
Okay, I think this is swinging the other way, though, because State, like, he goes Camel Archers, which is good, but the Horsemen should be anticipated. The surprising detail is that State, instead of going into Spears, he went into Horsemen and is now adding in Archers. So Kasva's essentially countering out your entire army. The interesting part, by the way, about going Abbasid Spears here is once you have Phalanx, they do a decent job of handling the men-at-arms as well. They cost less, and more of them can attack compared to the men-at-arms.
Yeah, I agree. I think there is just no front line in front of those Camel Archers, and while they are doing decent against individual men-at-arms, Horsemen plus men-at-arms flooding you is a different problem, and he did lose the trade, at least for the moment. He's going to slowly wall this off, though, and if he cleans this up, he is still in a good spot. But this gives a window for Kasva to flirt with the idea of Castle Age, especially because Kasva was able to keep some of his fishing eco alive.
I think he kept a decent amount of it alive, right? Like, he just kept pushing it back. State had this kind of problematic situation where he's up against the passive healing the docks, the active healing the fishing boats, and you eventually just can't keep, enough steam going there, especially if you're trying to counter with Camel Archers on land. It's just too pricey. So that kind of cost him dearly. And now, like, 2 ships in the night. They sail by, but that gives a flank attack for the demos, and so many of them are in here. State trying to get the heavy hit, but a great peel back just in time out. Kasva still hits him hard, but the return fire decimates State's fleet.
Neither of the players were looking at this naval engagement, but Kasva got the notice a little faster, and after the initial demo blasts, he got the better out of this. And once again, the same thing is punching State in the face than what happened in the previous game. Looking to 2 places and taking suboptimal engagements at both. That was a massive win on the water for Kasva. Could easily be the reason why he could win this game. If he wins this game, we would look at that moment and say, okay, this might have been the momentum swing.
Kasva feels the momentum on his side. Regnit's Cathedral on the way. State nowhere near a tech up. Even if he was, it would take him almost 2 minutes to get there. Kaz, with 8 Stringles, is going to force a double down if State wants to keep his fleet alive. And this is going to just put him further behind.
I really don't understand the Archers, KP. There is not a single Spearman in there for Kasva. What are you doing with the Archers against the men-at-arms? Feels like he's just trying to push out raw numbers, but that's going to be a suboptimal unit choice. He's going to get punished for this. Archers getting cleaned up. Camel Archers getting cleaned up as well, and Kasva, he won't get punished for getting to Castle Age over here. State is just confined into his base with no resources available, actually.
To a certain degree, you can maybe justify this play if your opponent doesn't have undermesh. But once he has undermesh, those men-at-arms, they get merely tickled. Like, they don't even care, right? So even when you get the Bounce Projectiles upgrade, you're doing 1 damage. Like, it's the worst-case situation for State. And now, we finally do see Raxes being added in. If these Raxes had been here earlier, I think he can win these land fights. Mass Spears completely dominates what Kaz is trying to do and forces him to make an Archer transition, which of course is expensive in the wood and then takes more investment away from the Navy side. It's crazy to think how that one choice has dictated now so much of this game.
Absolutely. Kasva also didn't have to respect the land engagements. He could dive in because he knew fully well that there wasn't a single spearman that could just massacre his horsemen. And in those engagements, the spearman on land against the horseman is very similar to what you have on the water with the demos. You look away for a second, you lose 5 units. And because there was no spearman there, as you mentioned, Kasva could actually prioritize focusing on the water because he knew fully well that he wasn't going to get punished on land.
We are still trading. Look, yeah, in for a penny, in for a pound. You got to give credit to State. What did I say early on the day? When you half-ass your way into these strategies, when you try to give yourself a recovery point that's different, that contradicts your strengths, you're probably going to lose. So whether for better or worse, State sticks to the script.
Only 2 demos for him, though. On the other side, 5 coming in for Kasva. This is the end here for State on the water, unless he gets some good demo hits.
One around the side, but it doesn't move. Kasva didn't micro it in. State somehow holding on for the moment, but the demo ship shuffle around the side. Excuse me, let me through, coming in. That should be enough to wipe him out. State should lose most of the fleet, and Kasva with a clear dominant advantage in count ship-wise. State now from a position of behind will try to make his way up. Military wing has been queued up. I think this is where Kasva not only can he clean up the fishing side, would even look to double down on the men-at-arms mass.
Yeah, he's got armored hull already on those ships, so this is not a fight that State can take anymore. At this point, the only thing that he can hope for is delaying Kasva a little bit, buying himself some time to get to that Castle Age. It's gonna be a nice and lovely demo out there. Could have been better, but still, At this point, it's all about delaying Kasva. He needs to buy time for that Castle Age. That's his only hope at this point.
Well. How the turns have tabled. Now it's you with the idle eco. Now it's you with the fishing department that can't do anything. And the only move left for State is to go on land. He's moving fast with this one. He's finally got the spears added in. Now, he could mass spears up. He does need to upgrade them, though. This is problematic. We are 15 minutes into a game. It's very easy to forget that you haven't upgraded. In fact, I've heard many players say that it's difficult to tell the difference between Dark and Feudal Age spears. And by the pips on the top, State may have not noticed the difference.
Yeah, he's still holding on to water just by a very narrow margin. Get some good demo hits in there, so at least Kasva is forced to retreat. He bought himself enough time to get to Castle Age. Ecos are still even, and Kasva's army is almost exclusively men-at-arms. There is still a scenario in which State gets a couple of crossbows and maybe holds this off. He's in a tough spot, but he might be able to stabilize.
I mean, it's the lack of food, though, right? Like, you know, you're going to have to get all these upgrades. You want to upgrade your Camelot, you want to upgrade your Spearman. Twice, by the way, because he still hasn't upgraded them. Like, can we check our racks? Because if he's got Phalanx, but he hasn't actually got the Feudal upgrade, this is going to be painful.
Oh, no Phalanx, no Feudal Age even. That's sad. That's very sad.
And he's getting boot camp. He's getting boot camp as well. So, like, he wants to invest in these units long term, but they still aren't being upgraded.
Oh, this would be such a... It would be a much better fight for him right now, because those are the frontline units. It's not even the Phalanx, although that would also come in handy. It's more about how long they survive as the front line. Now, State is doing an amazing job with the Camel Archers over here. Will pick off quite a few villagers, and he's buying himself a tremendous amount of time. Slowly cleaning up the regression inside his base. I think he's stabilizing KP.
It's so much more than that, Lida. He didn't lose on the water side, right? Like, he wasn't cleaned up in the end. State is still actively fishing. These Camel Archers are sniping out Eco, which is why when you look at the top, you can see it's actually State with a bigger Eco pop cap than Kasva.
Yeah, bottom left, 6 Eco killed, or 6 workers killed by Kasva, 35 by State. So far, he's been dominating that department. Slowly, Kasva is catching up, but these Camel Archers, they accomplished what they were meant to accomplish. Just managed to keep Kasva's army inside his base, force him to pursue faster units with those men-at-arms, and State bought himself a tremendous amount of time.
And I think he finally realizes that Kasva's like, I should have killed you while I could. State's like, yes, you probably should have, but I've been able to exist here, thrive here, under your nose. And I can tell you, Kasva has a big difference to make up here. Look at the worker kill count, 44 compared to 10. Needs to snipe out everything he can.
Yeah. He's still doing a great job shutting down the trade, though.
How many traders have died? I wish we could break that down. Like, I feel like 20 of these worker kills, these 52 worker kills are probably traders.
Yeah, that's actually crazy. That's a crazy stat. Now the fishing ships are also gone. But State still has a competitive eco. Problem is he doesn't have a competitive army now, and as long as those men-at-arms were forced to chase the Camel Archers, this is fine for State. Now they can commit. And the real upgrades are just now coming in. Second range defense upgrade, maces, 200 weapons are still lacking. Once those are in, this is impossible for State to fight.
Like, honestly, it's crazy to think that, especially when you consider the early naval aggression, that Camel Archer raid may have been all the kills we've seen from State this game on eco.
True.
It's crazy to think about. Now, the only reason State was kind of competing is he's had the second TC behind this, but irrelevant. Just too many men-at-arms, no solution. A bunch of switch ups throughout this game from State, but none able to put him ahead means that Kasva will continue on in the upper bracket. State, wait, no, this is the lower bracket, right?
Yep, this is the lower bracket, but
so
Kasva,
State is out. There we go.
State is out, Kasva moves on. Great show from him, and as I said, you could go back to that single naval engagement where Kasva had the actual better outcome, but also the fact that the men-at-arms, they actually accomplished a lot more when it comes to shutting down the trade, partly because there was just no spearmen mixed in to deal with the horsemen that accompanied the men-at-arms. There was no front line in front of those Camel Archers, so they kept having to retreat, struggle to defend those traders. Maybe if State walls off that neutral trade post a little sooner, that could have been a factor too, because he really struggled to get those walls up in Feudal Age, and by the time he got it walled off, it was too late.